And that's how this nightmare began. Well, I gotta tell you, it hurts me just to be editing this video. This happened in June, and it's October, and I still don't want to revisit this. This is how this nightmare of a project started, but it really tested me. I learned a lot through some blood, literally blood, sweat, and tears.
Well, that ain't good.
It all started on this beautiful day. I was trying to work on my irrigation. The problem is, I have some irrigation on this new property, and it has two lines, and one of them happened to be leaking. And I went to this valve that is in my neighbor's field here to turn off my irrigation, and that valve just basically bit the dust. This thing is 30, 40 years old, who knows? And it no longer shuts. The bearings in this valve totally went out, and I'm trying to expose this valve to see how deep it goes and how am I going to fix this thing. So follow along. So if you want to see some real world applications of PSI, thrust forces, and learn what to do and not to do with me along this project, stay tuned.
This old valve will not let me turn my sprinkler off, so I had to get this thing from around it so that I can pry it up. So gotta go get a shovel, dig that up, see if I can pull it off.
So after I got this thing exposed, I tried multiple ways of getting this valve head off of the butterfly valve shaft. I tried a bearing splitter. I tried taking the bearing splitter and using the slide hammer, and it was just so corroded on there, it was not coming out. I thought surely a little bit of heat could help me get this thing off. And there is a shaft and then a keyway, and that keyway is basically what attaches to the valve that turns it. Anyway, the shaft and the key and the keyway was just corroded, welded on, and that thing was not coming off. I thought maybe if I could expose this thing a little bit better, that I would have a better idea of what to do.
Well, that ain't good.
So at this point, I have been trying to dig this pipe up, expose it so I can see what's going on, so that I can begin to repair this. And perhaps this is what really I learned made my job so much easier. It's all about a good power washer. So, if you have some kind of a excavator, mini X, or a backhoe, you can really expose a ton of pipe with a good power washer. And then you dig a sump, like right here. Dig a deep hole where all that water and mud goes down to, and then you can pull all of that slop out of there. And then you can go back to doing some more power washing and then dig that sump out again. And you'll see me do this over and over again right here. And I just perfectly exposed this entire pipe, and you can see this giant piece of concrete block right there that I was just washing. That mud that's not, I'm standing on it right there. That is a thrust block. And that thrust block, I was able to expose using this power washer, is what was keeping the pipe from thrusting this way with the sheer amount of water and the even the low PSI of 40. That amount of water puts a lot of pressure on a pipe. So at this point, I've gotten the valve exposed, and I've decided to just cut this valve out of here. And this is one of the first mistakes in hindsight, is if I had simply not cut this pipe out, it would have made my job a lot simpler. I should have left the original pipe on the left intact, and I could have just put another valve in and redone the pipe from the broken part to the right to where the valve sits. Well, right now I'm just doing the best I can, and thankfully the Mecalac is making this job doable for a one-man shit show that I'm running right here. You can see this has become a neighborhood affair, and to be honest, I could not have done this without all the help from my neighbors Trevor and Alex, and especially Dean. Dean is the old farmer who's pretty much put all this stuff in to begin with many years ago. So at this point, I'm doing some more power washing and sump digging because I need to free up this pipe because it's too far down. Anyway, we're getting this glued back in, and everybody's helping me do that. And we're finally getting the valve back in right here. So at this point, you can see that the left end of the pipe and the right end of the pipe, they are not parallel with each other. The left end is like several inches below. And as we're lowering this down, I'm now connecting to the left end of the pipe, and I'm going to raise that pipe up, 3 inches so that the valve can connect with the left side of the pipe and the right side of the pipe, which are just freshly glued. And this was where one of the big problem was. We got this connected, and then we let that pipe down, and it was probably pulling on that freshly glued joint, and that was why this thing blew as soon as I shut that valve. So here's another problem. In order for us to have connected the far left pipe, which kind of goes under that tree, to this new portion that we glued this valve gasket on, we had to put a slip fitting on. And I didn't know much about thrust forces at the time, but as soon as I shut that valve, it's going to start pushing to the left because I have a leak on my side. The pressure drops significantly. And And as the pressure on the left goes to zero, basically, and the pressure on the right is about 2,000 pounds, it's going to be pushing that whole valve to the left. And in the original installation, that whole pipe was just one solid piece, and it went all the way down several hundred yards, pipe upon pipe upon pipe, and it could push against that valve, and it was okay, but not with a slip fitting. I gotta tell you, at this point, I was feeling really triumphant. It looked really good. And, you know, believe it or not, it actually held water. Anyway, at this point, it was holding water. I didn't actually test it until the next day, and this is the next day. We've tested it. I allowed 24 hours to cure. Now I'm just digging out some of this excess water that was there, and I'm going to get ready to backfill it, thinking that I'm pretty much done. So this is 2x speed. I went and grabbed the skid steer bucket just so I could move some dirt a little bit more quickly and backfill this a little bit better. A lot of this dirt is not really high quality. I wanted it to be able to pack a little bit better than all of this organic type mud, dirt, clay. I wanted to get some better packable dirt in there. You can see even I had my trash pump here trying to pull some of this water and mud out of there just so I could prep it for backfill. And just one of the great features about the Mecalac, you can drop this bucket off super easily and attach any other bucket that you want. I try to get fancy here and scoot right out of my dump trailer, and I could have, but my truck wasn't attached to it, and so I was just moving it along. So not a great idea, but it could work in theory. Alright, I realized I'm not going to be able to scoot from my dump trailer, so I'm just going to try and dump this out. I've got the Mecalac bucket on the front of the goose line, and you'll see the stupidity that I tried. I either get lucky, God's watching over me, or I have just enough smarts to not hurt myself too much. And here comes the oh crap moment. As soon as this got up high enough and the sand started coming out, it then started pushing this trailer forward. And my Mecalac bucket just didn't have enough down pressure on it. Oh crap. One of the many butt-puckering moments on this project. But let me just tell you this, I will never do that again.
I was afraid of that.
Well, guys, up to this point, I have had the water turned on. The valve is open. I'm getting water to my property, and it is still leaking over there. And but I've pressure tested this new valve I put in, and everything in my mind seems to be working great. And I'm pretty much ready to cover this thing up. The one thing that I didn't do is close the valve, and I will tell you all about that in the next part. But here's a little teaser. When you add 40 psi over an 8-inch valve, that equates to about 2,000 pounds of pressure. And when you don't have a restriction valve or a thrust block or anything preventing that thrust from moving, then you're going to get an exploding wall of water in your face, knocking you back and gashing a large hole in your leg like this, requiring stitches. Anyway, thanks to a great doctor friend for sewing me up. See you next time.